Hey everybody, it's Ethan or Thick back with another mandala drawing video. One of my favorite kinds of designs to make. I love making patterns and repetitive things. They look very nice to me. So I'm just in Photoshop using the mandala tool with basic stuff. Basic black pencil line thing, nothing too texturally crazy. And just throw some shapes down. Whenever I start one of these, I just put down some shapes that I think look pretty good, and then I kind of go off of whatever I think those look like to make the rest of my drawing here. So at the moment, I'm kind of just still putting lines down, nothing too cohesive yet, but I do like this kind of like, I don't even know how to describe this shape. It feels organic to me, like maybe a pea pod shape, I guess. But I like that shape, so I drew a bunch of that. And I kind of just made it all look pretty similar-ish, kind of like petals on a flower. And then I added this border of kind of smaller frills. And at this point I was thinking it looks pretty floral, so I might just stick with a flower vibe for the whole thing. And then here I did another thing that I like to do is I changed up the symmetry. I went from the mandala tool to the radial tool, so that way I could get repetition of a different kind, and instead of it being like a 10-way mandala axis, it's a 6-way radial axis, so I could get these nice big petals in there. And then I'd fill those larger shapes with other designs. You can see me erasing something that I didn't like. I wanted to incorporate this kind of helix looking shape, so I got it lined up with the shape of the petal itself, and I wanted to even jam more of that kind of DNA helix structure in there, but it wasn't looking too good. There's a lot of moments I had in this process where I felt that I was trying too hard to put too many details in there. So I just had to kind of step back and recognize that the simplicity of that element was just good enough. And then zooming back, you're not even going to see some of these details I was thinking I was going to try and put in. Because initially I wanted all of these kind of spots here to look like eyeballs. But the level of detail to make them look like eyeballs kind of gets lost when you look at the whole thing. So I had to balance the details that I wanted to see and the details that you could actually see, once executed or whatever, I guess. These little blobby little bits that I'm putting in here were just really to kind of fill in space, but they reminded me of those outer little frills that I put on the previous section. So I was kind of like tying in the different layers a little bit. And I gotta say, this is the part where doing this drawing started to feel very tedious. And that's how I usually know I'm gonna come up with something good, is when I'm like, man, this is about to be super tedious. Like, you can see me taking very frequent breaks here after just a little bit of line work. I'm like, no, I gotta stop, I just gotta think about something else for a second. Because after I drew the first set of lines, I looked and I was like, oh, I have to do this 5 more times. That doesn't seem super, I guess, stimulating. So it was really a moment of tedium and just boredom at parts. And that's the one thing that I kind of wish I could do a little faster, is these tedious parts. Because I'm worried about what each individual part looks like when I could just be kind of blasting through it more and thinking more about how it'll look as a whole, instead of going through each little minute part and being like, no, I don't like how this line squiggled here, I have to redo it. The squiggle was off, I have to redo it. And it's like kind of like a tedious, I don't know, it just, I wish it wasn't so tedious to draw the same thing over and over and over again. But I usually use that as like a moment to kind of check out, go into a meditation mode, or talk with a friend, or talk to the chatters, or whatever it is, until I get back to parts like this where I have to actually use my brain and figure out how I want the shapes to look and how the lines are going to actually work with each other, instead of having that kind of knowledge of what I'm going to be doing for the next hour. Because sometimes you draw a part, you think that looks good, I'd like to see that everywhere, and you realize doing that's going to take 2-3 hours just to put that one little part where I want to see it. Even this part, these little like gem pieces here, I'm like looking at how many I'm gonna have to put on, and I'm like, that looks like a lot, so I moved on to a different part. I'm gonna come back to the jewel pieces here. Yeah, but I had to like take a mental break, figure out what I wanted to see. I even tried adding a different shape so that it wouldn't feel like I was doing the same thing, but nothing worked, so I ended up wasting a bunch of time only to come back to the original idea. And it's like, if I had just kind of accepted how boring and tedious it was gonna be, I could have probably blasted through it instead of wasting so much time. Like that fourth gem took me like a half hour. The fifth gem took me 5 minutes. If I wasn't so worried about trying to make it, a certain ways, and if I just trusted the way I was thinking about it, my instincts, then it would have, just been faster. And I'm not like obsessed with trying to draw faster, but sometimes, when I'm streaming, I start a bit, and I look at the time, and then I finish the bit, and I look at the time again, and it's been, much longer than I expected. It's always hard to tell when I'm actually going to finish something because of that. Because I think, okay, I'm going to get this much done, and then I only do, the next element or so. I would really love to just sit down and finish the whole thing at once, but I think I had a total of 16 working hours on this, and that's just not like feasible to sit down for 16 hours. I wish it was. That would be kind of cool. Anyway, I finished off the rim of those petals, and I was starting to get really excited with the way that this looked. And I needed to figure out something to do on the outside, so I changed the symmetry back to the way I had it in the middle, with like a 10 segment mandala symmetry. And I was thinking, okay, if the middle part is kind of like the bulb or the seeds or whatever, and then there's the petals kind of in the middle layer, then the outside could just be more leafy. And I don't even remember, I think it's like, they're like palm leaves, or those kind of like banana leaves, like longer, straighter type of leaf shape. And I don't know, I thought that kind of matched the vibe a bit better than a more kind of wide or segmented leaf shape. And then I also kind of envisioned like maybe these leaves are opening up a little bit. kind of like pea pods, kind of like how that part in the middle was. So I'm kind of just reincorporating some of the ideas from earlier, just maybe in a slightly different way. And I'm adding a little bit of texture to these border lines, giving them a little bit of like a, you know, a planty frill type of look. And at some point they kind of just reminded me of like corn, and how you have to strip off the layers of corn to get to the ear on the inside. You gotta shuck off all that stuff. That's just what it reminded me of. And I don't know, nice little eyeball thing in the middle. The corners where was where I actually added a little bit of depth to it to kind of make it feel less 2D. I find that a lot of my, you know, mandalas don't really have a whole lot of depth to them. So I tried to do, you know, a little something to mitigate that. So we finally get to the coloring, and I found that like a lot of the times the drawing process is half line work and then half coloring. Trying to figure out which colors to use is just as hard as trying to figure out where the lines go. And I don't know, I thought to myself, this feels kind of purpley, kind of goldy. So I just kind of threw colors down. You know, whenever I start from the middle and go outwards, the middle is always a lot less cohesive, because I haven't really thought of like a theme yet, and I haven't really stuck with any idea yet, so it's a lot of random shapes. And I noticed, you can see me repairing these areas, I noticed this big stupid white line somehow in the middle of one of my layers that I didn't even realize was there. So at some point during this, I had to go and repair that. That was very annoying, discovering like a giant issue. I don't even remember drawing this line, but here it is, and now I have to kind of account for it. I had to go back into the layer and like isolate all the white. What a process. That's one thing that's rough about digital art, is sometimes you make a stroke or something, you don't really see where it is. Sometimes it's like a mistake that you can't discover until later, which makes it harder to deal with, but whatever, it's not that bad. So once the details start getting larger and it's less random shapes, I like to throw in color fades. And I liked the idea of doing a kind of pastel purple to green to yellow type of color scheme. And after I put those colors in, I realized that these details were too dark, so I had to go in and change the colors. Yeah, I was just feeling very planty, kind of green, kind of blue. And then these definitely just felt like gems to me on the outer ring of this petal here. So I made these all look gold. I don't usually pick a deeper yellow, but when I do, it's for gold. And then for the gem parts, I just picked, ruby, sapphire, emerald colors. Nothing too revolutionary there. Just wanted it to look ornate. I was thinking to myself, this is probably the most ornate thing I've ever drawn. And it's not necessarily, something real. In fact, I would say these kind of gemstone areas have a lot more of like an alien vibe to them than a hard like gemstone look. You can tell when I'm really concentrating because my hair will get so messy from me just running my hands through it. It just look like I have bedhead all the time, but it's just from me not paying attention, just fidgeting with it. Oh, we got a surprise visit from the cat. You know I can still work with a cat watching while I work on my shoulders. It's pretty great. She's so small that she could just fit right there. She watches what I do, where she looks out the window, and she's just chilling right there on my shoulder. Now, I made this part purple just simply because I always thought that gold and purple goes pretty well together. And it happens to match the stuff from the inside, but really I just wanted to see gold and purple together. So that's what I did for the rim of this big petal shape, I guess. And then I knew that I just wanted the middle, I wanted the colors to just look like candy. Like Smarties almost level of pastel. And blue is very hard to work with when you're picking multiple shades to kind of like work together. I think I spent the most time picking which blues to use for this section of the drawing. The greens flew by. Like I knew what kind of green is so easy. Green has all kinds of good shades that go together. Blue's got some, you know, that kind of counteract each other a little bit, so I had to pick the right ones. I was doing it for the overall gradient, so I was being very careful to pick, you know, I don't know. I'm very picky about my color choices. I try not to have anything that's too dark. I try not to have anything that pops out at you in a weird way. You know, I take a step back, and if it is too dark, too light, and I can tell that it's jutting out or falling too far back into the drawing, I change it. I do not like when, because like you can oftentimes tell the depth based on color choice too, because there's saturation and lightness within the color, so you can always make something look deeper or lighter or whatever without even adding any black or white to it. So I made a really kind of nice gradient from a blue with some green in it to yellow with some green in it. And then I noticed one of my blues was off, so I spent a bunch of time kind of like thinking to myself, what kind of blue should I use? That blue's got too much white in it, not enough green. It looks, you know, maybe a little swampy even. I don't get back to it for a minute, but you know, it's always just in my head. It's just like, that color's not right. I gotta go back and fix that at some point. I think that's the thing I pay the most attention to, is the color choice, probably. Here we go. I spent probably 5-10 minutes changing that But hey, I found the perfect color, found the perfect blue, and that's all that matters. Moving on to the background, I was like, this has to be more green. I want it to feel like a flower sitting on top of its leaves, I guess. But at the same time, I wanted the leaves to be interesting. So they get their own kind of like greenish blue color gradient with all the different layers of it and whatnot. The inside is more blue, outside kind of more green. Cat cam. Oh my gosh. I always have people, or I guess I always have Jill in my chat asking me to show my cats on the camera, so I tend to oblige whenever I can. And then I know that I needed some more depth, so with the corners I made them super dark and go to like a red, so it felt like it was farther away. Kind of lifted the whole thing off a little bit. And then for the coloration within the leaves themselves, I kind of went with something that was the opposite on the color spectrum from what was already there. So with, you know, green opposite is red, so I went for a pink to a red on the inside. It kind of reminded me of like watermelon or something. You know, green on the outside, red on the inside. And then the other leaves that had a bit more of like a blue tint to them, I went with a kind of a yellower approach. Yellow to green, I think. Because, well, the opposite of blue is orange, but I didn't want any orange in it. So I kind of just went to yellow. There's a less contrasting look, but I felt like if I just went pure orange, it would just feel weird. I had some other plans for other details, but in the end, I thought that it was just too big and detailed to really add more detail to it in the form of color elements. Like here, I try to make this look like an eye. I had the idea to make them all look like eyes. And I spent so much time only to realize that you could barely even see it. You could barely even see the detail when you look at the thing as a whole. So it's like, why am I spending all this time? It doesn't work at all, so I just kind of left most of it the way it was. But I did add a bit of a texture to the outer leaves that I thought was good. It was a little bit of a splatter with a color fade across the whole layer mask. So it was like little colors of splatter were on the back leaves. And it looks pretty good in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for making it to the end. Hope you're ready for a little ad. Enjoy. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please come through to my website at www.thick216.com. All my favorite designs are there. Come through to my Instagram where I have all of my published works, only bangers on my Instagram. My Redbubble page features all of my best designs on some wonderful merch. All kinds of clothing, mouse pads, hats, anything you can think of. Shower curtains, stickers, laptop cases, phone cases. Here I am displaying a nice hoodie, classic design, a pillow. Who could do without a pillow? Nobody. Everyone needs a pillow. Very soft. We've also got prints. Any kind of print you could want. Posters, metal prints, framed prints. We've got zipper bags, zipper pouches. Put every pencil, every pen you've ever had in there. Mouse pad, desk pad, game mats, anything you could think of. I've even got a bath mat and a shower curtain. Also come through to my TikTok, small videos there, and then my YouTube for all my full-length videos, and Fiverr if you want me to make art for you. Once again, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Here's the final result. I always love making mandala drawings. They just feel so creatively fulfilling because I go in with like no ideas at all. And I come out with something that looks nice most of the time. you know, you can kind of create your own restrictions when you're working on one of these, and it just feels really nice when I get to kind of color it in and see it in its end phase after, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours. It feels like a real accomplishment. So anyways, thanks again for watching. Follow me on Instagram to see more of my art, YouTube to see more videos of me making art, Redbubble if you want to see my art on physical things, of course. Thank you again. And